Here today to talk about some of the concerns with this system are lawyers Asher Honigman and Douglas Judson. Mr. Judson is also a town councillor for Fort Frances and has been subject to some of these code of conduct issues. And Mr. Honigman is his lawyer. Thank you both so much for joining me. Now let's start with the beginning. Mr. Judson, I explained what a municipal code of conduct is, but what do they typically include, and what are some of the parts that you say can be weaponized against unpopular speech?
Thanks for having me, Christine. So codes of conduct find their genesis back in 2017, and that's when the Municipal Act was amended to require municipalities to put these instruments in place and also to appoint integrity commissioners to investigate any complaints that are made under them. Now, the problem is that the legislation from the province actually doesn't provide any guidance on what the scope of the code of conduct ought to be. So on a city-by-city basis, they're all over the map. And we have really no guidance as to what appropriate conduct measures ought to be in place. So as a result, there's many well-meaning codes of conduct that have resulted in significant overreach by integrity commissioners, and then municipal councils are ill-equipped to challenge the recommendations that are brought forward. So just as an example, in my own municipality, the code of conduct prohibits any council members from using, quote, indecent, abusive, or insulting words, tone, or expression toward any person. So that's obviously a very subjective and open-ended phrasing, even though on its face, you might think that that's perfectly appropriate. My code of conduct also says that I cannot speak in a manner that is discriminatory to any individual, but it provides no definition of what discrimination is. So there's examples like that across the province where integrity commissioners have been able to take advantage of that ambiguity and go after councillors for comments which in many respects I would say are fair game political expression.
Really, really interesting. Now, Mr. Honigman, once a complaint is made under a municipal code of conduct, what would happen next?
Well, under the Municipal Act, well, first of all, thanks, Christine, for having me on again. It's great to be here. Once that complaint is made, the integrity commissioner takes over if they decide that the complaint has merit. And there's not really much in the way of guidance for them to make that determination. It's really up to their discretion. And if they decide that the claim has merit, they move forward with investigating it. And as Councillor Judson and I learned, well, I think we'll probably get into this in the next segment, that investigation can take a very long time before it comes to fruition. And then eventually, if the integrity commissioner decides that there's been an infraction of the code of conduct, they can make a recommendation to council, and council has the ability to apply punitive measures against the council member.
So, Mr. Judson, I wanted to follow up on what you said earlier. This seems well-intentioned. How do you respond to people who raise that concern that, these cities should have codes of conduct. You shouldn't be discriminatory. You shouldn't be abusive. But how do you respond to that concern?
No, I think that's a live issue. And I don't think there's anyone saying there shouldn't be guardrails. Like certainly Asher and I are both lawyers, and we have guardrails in our practice as professionals. Mm-hmm. And I think public office holders at other levels of government have those rules that they have to follow too. And part of the reason that, we recognize there needs to be standards, that's really what's triggering the province to take another look at the legislation now and consider whether it's appropriate. And part of that is because there are examples of serious misconduct that I think we can all agree on are beneath the expectations we have of municipal office holders. So, for example, there are municipal politicians in Ontario that in recent history have been challenged with and are accused with sexual assault or sexual harassment allegations.